And welcome to the BCM Podcast. I am Brad Swale here, as always, with Michael Searle and Charles Blaine. You can follow us wherever you're listening or watching this podcast, whether it's YouTube or whatever. But we're also on all the podcatchers. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. The YouTube. The YouTubes. We're there too. So yeah, follow us there. Michael, what are we doing here?
We got a great interview. We have the guest today is AliceMarie Johnson. I'll give you a little bit more about her after Charles plays his video.
Let's get to it.
Marie Johnson, you see her here rushing into the arms of relatives, was released after 21 years in prison. She was sentenced to life for a first-time nonviolent federal drug conviction. It came after Kim Kardashian West lobbied the president on her behalf.
I'm so happy, but it's so overwhelming to me to be able to just hug my family.
Good evening. I'm AliceMarie Johnson. I was once told that the only way I would ever be reunited with my family would be as a corpse. But by the grace of God and the compassion of President Donald John Trump, I stand before you tonight, and I assure you, I'm not a ghost. I am alive, I am well, and most importantly, I am free. 6 months after President Trump granted me a second chance, he signed the First Step Act into law, and it brought joy, hope, and freedom to thousands of well-deserving people. Hallelujah! My faith in justice and mercy was rewarded.
Awesome.
AliceMarie Johnson, author of Afterlife, My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom. We're excited to talk to you.
Yeah.
Excited to be here. Every time I see that moment of my release, I can't help it. My heart swells up. It gives me chills, and I have to most of the time just hold back tears because I can never forget that moment that I was released from prison.
Well, can we start there? Can you walk us through like what was going through your mind? I mean, I'm sure your heart was racing, everything was going through your mind. So, I mean, can you just kind of put us in that place?
And Alice, real quick before we go there, for just to tell the listeners more about you. You're a criminal justice reform advocate. As Brad mentioned, you're the author of Afterlife, My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom. And currently you're the CEO of a foundation, Taking Action for Good. And on a personal level, you're one of the most beautiful and inspiring human beings that I've ever met. I'm so excited for you to be here. You can follow Alice at AliceMarieFree on Twitter. You can find her book at Amazon, and her website is www.takingactionforgood.org to learn more about what she's doing.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. I guess so. Yeah, we'll start there. So, Alice, what was it like going through that moment? What was going through your head?
When I saw my family, that morning when I received the news that I was going home, it was actually on a Wednesday. I know this is kind of crazy. Wednesday is hamburger day in every federal prison. And so it was so surreal to me because I was all over the TV. Some of my friends in prison were telling me, Miss Alice, you're on TV. We think you're going home. I went in my room, shut the door, looked out the window, and just wanted to do something because normal. Because I've had so many ups and downs, so many false starts thinking over the years that I was going to go home and then nothing. So even though this was in this moment, I'm all over TV, I still didn't want to just totally embrace that I might be going home. So I said, I'm not going to miss hamburger day. I went on into the dining room, and before I could I took a bite, and before I could even swallow it, I heard my name over their intercom telling me to report back to my unit. I had a legal call. My attorneys were there on the phone, and then Kim was on the phone. She had joined them too. And when she told me that we did it, and I'm like, did what? She said, you're out of there. You can go home. That moment, it felt like a ton of bricks. It was more than just almost 22 years rolling off of me. It was the burden of just being separated from my family and just that lightness of now this is real. And there was such joy in the whole prison. They were screaming. The women were screaming because they heard me screaming. I jumped so high in that room. I think I described it almost like a Pentecostal moment where I'm shouting so loud, I'm jumping. I think I defied all the laws of gravity. I jumped almost to the top of that ceiling screaming. And, just that day, knowing that I was leaving friends who had become my family behind, um, it was something to hear them cheering me, and it was sounding like an earthquake as they were stopping, begging me not to forget about them. But even when I got in the car with my family members, because I didn't know that there were all these reporters across the road. So my entire family, I thought my whole family was going to pick me up. And then I found out that only one uh, vehicle could pick me up and that my family would be waiting on the other side of the road. All of them couldn't come. As I was pulling up and I saw all of the satellites and reporters, that was like my heart is racing just seeing all of that. But when I saw my family on the other side of that road, I think I jumped out while the van was still rolling and running across that road to my family. Everything disappeared. I didn't think about TV cameras. I didn't think about anything else. But this is my family. And you probably saw, well, I see that over and over. My hands were up in the air. When I went into prison, my hands, I was shackled, belly chains, leg chains, ankle chains, and to just have that freedom to lift my hands in the air was like that freedom moment. I'm literally running into freedom to hug my family and not be constrained by chains. It's real now. This moment is real.
Yeah. So some people might say, well, geez, 22 years, Alice, you must have done something horrible. What can you just talk really briefly about how you ended up in prison and kind of your thoughts on the underlying criminal justice system that led you to 22 years in prison?
I never had a thought in my entire life. I'd never been in trouble. I was not an individual that I would say had a criminal mind and was thinking about things that I could do to make gain through criminal activities. That never even crossed my mind. I was a mother of 5 children. I got married when I was only 15 years old. I was married and pregnant. And so, for me, I faced many challenges in my life, including, trying to finish even high school, trying to get out of school on time, because I was not allowed to return back to school because I was pregnant. So I missed a whole year of school. That's one of my first big struggles that I can tell you because I was determined that I was not going to be left behind, that I'm going to get an education. Education was very important in my family. Both my parents had drilled that into all 9 of our heads. There were 9 of us, 8 girls, 1 boy. And my siblings went on to college. And, we just had that was important in our family. And, being a teenage mother, that was a big obstacle. But I asked my friends to bring their books home. I studied, I took their tests. I used that year of missing my whole sophomore year in high school to study, take their test, and be prepared. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but some way I was going to prove that I knew the curriculum. And my mother, who was always a big supporter of mine, we had to meet with the school board. And when I told them that I knew the curriculum, I think they kind of laughed at me because there was no way someone could miss a year of school and know that. And so they got teachers from another school district to put together what they considered, I knew it was a joke, a very hard test from every subject, thinking that I was not going to pass. I ended up making a 98%.
Oof.
Wow.
They called me back down there and I was placed with the rest of my class and I finished high school on time. But while I'm in school, I also knew that I had to be prepared because I had a second child, but they didn't know about that in my senior year. Because going into my senior year, because thank goodness those little baby doll tops were in style. So they didn't realize that I had another child that I was pregnant for a few months of that last 11th year. So when I show up at my graduation, I show up with a baby too, and they're shocked. Where did this child come from? Um, but I took secretarial classes, and I made sure that in my senior year, I go to school half day. I still graduated with top grades because I've always been driven by what I call excellence. My family is very competitive. Everyone made good grades, and we always strive to just do the best that we could. And also growing up with parents who had very strong work ethics, and we did too, because I worked in cotton fields, chopping and picking cotton, and working from the time a little child, and then working from the time I was 11 with my mother, who's a chef at country clubs, and then we ended up getting our own restaurant. So I knew what hard work meant, so I was never afraid of that. In all, during the course of my marriage to my uh, ex-husband, which was a very turbulent marriage, tumultuous marriage, it was a hard marriage. We both were too young, and I don't blame my husband now because I can look back with more grace now. Uh, he just was young to be married. He was 17, I was 15. And I think he didn't really come to grips that he was a married man. And we had a total of 5 children. But throughout my career, every job that I get, I continue to try to take college classes and just always better myself because I want to give that example to my children too. I didn't want them to see a mother who wasn't trying, who was depending on just the government to take care of me. But I did hit some rough spots where I did have to temporarily get on those programs, but it's never meant for you to stay on it. And I didn't want my children to think that that's how things are to be. And so I took jobs, but every time I take a job, because I have very good secretarial skills, I'd work hard and I'd advance very quickly. And one of those jobs that I took was with FedEx. It was Federal Express at the time. I started in their secretarial pool, and in no time, I had promoted to something else. And then within a very short time, I became a manager in computer ops, which was another big test in itself because I didn't really know about computers. But I had as I say, that spirit of excellence. I knew about people, and they needed someone to balance out, and I was a quick learner. And before I knew it, I was able to go in and spot problems on interface boards, bring everything down from and start it back up from a cold start. And even the engineers were amazed that I was soaking up information like a sponge. And that led me to other promotions in the company where I started training people for management and traveling the country, facilitating classes, and just working as hard as I could. I'd be the first one. I always felt that if I was not at work at least 30 minutes early, I was late.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always felt that I think I challenged myself. I wasn't competing with anyone else but myself to be the best that I could be. So doing that hard work in that season of raising my children, my husband, our marriage had been on the rocks, many separations, and finally the day came when it was completely over. No more breaking up to make up.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself a divorced woman with 5 children and didn't know where my husband was. Received zero support. And so for the first time, it's like I'm free, but am I really free? I'm here trying to take care of all these children by myself. And I started really getting, I was overwhelmed, really. Um, this part of the story is a very dark part in my life. I met someone, started gambling, and I'm going to say, just caught up in that because I really missed so much of my young life. That was so exciting to me
Yeah.
to be out there, the bright lights, and, everything seems exciting to me. But then I started getting behind on my bills. And something happened. I won't even go into all of that. It's in my book of exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But to
Yeah.
make the long story short, I ended up losing my job. and I'm really in a bad place mentally, and just really just making crazy mistakes. And an offer came to me to be what is called a telephone mule.
Yeah.
And it was said to me that all you have to do is when they call you, you call, just give me the number. They won't. And I knew that was wrong. And I was so scared. But at that time, I'm about to have my lights turned off. We don't even have food in the house. And then to add to all of this, my youngest son was killed in a scooter accident. And even trying to pull back away from that, I didn't even have money to bury my son. I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm not, as I say, I'm not making excuses for myself, but I really was in a bad place mentally. And when everything, I'm going to say, when the house of cards fell down and someone was caught, he had my phone number in his pocket. He was coming in town, and I didn't even know him, but they knew my phone number for me to just give someone else their phone number.
Yeah.
But of course, he had been incarcerated many times, and they went to people who were involved, and deals were made. I was offered a deal of 3 years, and my attorney told me, don't take it because you don't have any money, you don't have any drugs, they don't have anything on you. But I didn't know about conspiracy, and I didn't take what was offered to me. I decided to go to trial. And at trial, I was found guilty of attempted possession because we didn't have possession. I know many will say it was possession, but it was not. It was attempted possession of a much lesser amount, but it was able to be said relevant conduct, that it was estimated this crazy amount. I don't know where that came from, but it wasn't even testified to that much of weights of drugs. But that's now those laws have changed, and you have to have you can't just come up with a estimated what you feel that it had to be. There
Yeah.
has to be something concrete. And at sentencing, I didn't even know. My lawyer never told me that I could be facing a life sentence, because he said 3 to 5 years, possibly. And so I'm thinking I'm going to get 5 years. And when I went to the first sentencing, they had forgotten to give me my pre-sentence report to tell me what I was facing. So they had to give me that. And when I got back to to the jail, because I was convicted on Halloween, trick or treat, of course. I remember being handcuffed and agents holding me on each side and telling me, trick or treat, trick or treat.
Wow.
And I'm hearing my family out there screaming and crying because they couldn't believe it. And I'm being told, I got in my ear an agent telling me trick or treat, while I'm hearing my family screaming and crying, which added a little bit of cruelty to the whole thing. But anyway, when I went back to my jail cell, because I was immediately taken into custody on Halloween, and I had to wait for my sentencing date. When I go back and I see recommended life, I just dropped the papers. I mean, this can't be real. And even my family wanted to know what's on the papers, because they had gone to the sentencing. I said, it's got on here life, but I know that's a mistake, because I said, no, we didn't even think it was real then. But when I went back on my sentencing date, and I was pronounced guilty of attempted possession, and money laundering automatically comes with the drug charge, whether you've laundered, because they figure that you're taking the money and that you're buying more drugs with it. So I'm convicted of that, and I received life plus 25 years, and without the possibility of parole. I could hear my father back there. It was silence, total silence at first. And then I just heard these big gulping sobs. And it was coming from my father, who'd always been such a strong man. And that nearly broke me, but a peace came all over me in that moment. Because I remember when I was working, one of my employees at FedEx told me one time, she said, Alice, whatever you do, go praying. And I was headed to my sentencing, and I was reciting the 23rd Psalm. And I kept saying over and over, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that you are with me. And that just kept going over and over because it's just a shadow of death. It's not death. But the main thing is the Lord was with me. And that's the only thing that I can tell you is that peace of God came all over me. And I was able not to break down in that courtroom.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
I mean, you know, you talked about when you found out you were getting released, it was hamburger day, and you kind of went back in your cell because you didn't want to get your hopes up because you've kind of heard this from time to time, and you wanted to see if it was really real. Was there a similar feeling when you heard that sentencing? I mean, because knowing what you had done, it's just unfathomable that that's what the outcome would be. So, I mean, I know you said it was just kind of pure silence and you had this peace come over you, but I mean, through your mind, could you even reconcile that? Was that something that you could even, like, what was going on?
I never thought about that before, Charles, but you're probably right in that kind of surreal moment because that was a surreal moment. When the day that they were saying I was going home, and that was a surreal moment too, the day that I was told that I was never going home. And I couldn't even digest that was possible still. But I went back when they took me back to the jail cell again, and I just really prayed and I asked God that, there's got to be some meaning in this. There's got to be a reason for this because it didn't make any sense. There was no balance whatsoever in my case. And to receive literally unexecuted sentence of death because it means that I would have death by incarceration. That was my death sentence, and it would be executed on the day of my death. But I have to, when things are going crazy in life, I'll find myself stepping back and saying, there's got to be some meaning in this. And so I asked the Lord, if you can use me in prison, I'm available. And that kind of gave me comfort that there had to be something. And I still have still have skills I can teach. And something was shaken up inside of me. And I've always been able to write. And I say that gift was stirred up. And one thing that I started doing was I started writing plays and getting women involved. And I saw a complete transformation over the entire compound. Many, many women have never had anyone tell them, who are in prison, they're broken. Many are broken when they come in there. They've already experienced trauma. You would not believe the stories that I heard from women of their life and their path that led to prison, the abuse, the trauma,
Oh
the
gosh.
all of the things. Many had mental health issues. They didn't even need to be in prison. They needed mental health care. And just to see the changes I called it my community
Yeah.
because that's where I'm at now. When I first entered prison, a woman in a wheelchair, I guess she saw me looking lost and she asked me my name and I told her and she said, Alice, bloom where you're planted. God knows where you are. And that just hit me in my belly. And it gave me this comfort and this peace again that I'm here, but God knows where I am. And since He knew where I wasn't lost to Him. I knew He was with me. And the one of the first victories that I saw, because I had a computer background, I was placed in vocational technical, and my job was to help women who was about to leave and go home with skills that they would need upon release. I would help them with their job resumes because I'd read many resumes and written many resumes in my career and did many interviews during my career. So I would do mock interviews with them. I helped them put their resumes together. I helped them with their typing skills, computer skills. But then I noticed something wrong. Women who had long sentences, even 20 years, not even life, but just long sentences, were locked out of the opportunity to participate in those classes because they were only allowing the people in that was their priority who were going home.
Mm-hmm.
So I inquired with the staff there, why is it people with long sentences can't come? And it's like we're wasting our time. They've got plenty of time to participate in these classes. And my response was, how do you tell a woman not to hope?
Right.
How do you tell a person not to prepare for a future? What if laws change? What if their cases are overturned and then they're going home unprepared? And
Yeah.
so I asked that question to the women, why have you never questioned this? And they said, it's not going to do any good, Miss Alice, because we understand what they're saying. I said, I'm going to fight for you. And that was my first big fight. I hadn't even been in prison a year yet. I challenged it and I won.
Yeah.
And it impacted the entire system because now they've got to allow a certain percentage of people with long sentences to be able to participate in those programs. And good thing that I did fight because laws did change. Some
Mhm.
women were given immediate releases, and they were more prepared. I had a good friend, Cheryl. She said every time someone would enter one of those classes who had long sentences like she and I did, even after I left that particular prison, she would tell them, "You have Alice Johnson to thank for this,
Mm.
for fighting for you."
Yeah.
So even coming out of prison, my advocacy actually started in prison.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw so many. I began looking at obstacles in prison as opportunities. If I saw something that needed to be fixed as an obstacle, let me see what I can do to help. Uh, I used to tell the women that everyone has the opportunity to do good. What's stopping you? Prison don't stop you. No one can take your character away from you because you come to prison. You can still dream, you can still hope. And really, in my encouraging the other women, I kept myself encouraged.
Sure.
Like praying for someone else, and it lifts your burdens just knowing that you're ministering to someone else. So it was a lot of things that I did while I was incarcerated. I'm not going to even go through all those the things that I did, but it was it kept me from feeling sorry for myself. And I
Yeah.
always had this hope that one day someone is going to see me, they're going to hear my story, and they're going to see literally the injustice of me spending life in prison when I didn't pose no threat to the community. And I felt that my sentence was too harsh, but I had to keep still fighting, still keep trying to get home to my family, but I didn't let my freedom consume me.
Yeah.
Had I only looked at counting the days off the calendar, then I would have lost. I would have given the system my life because I was no longer living life. And
Yeah.
that's important to me, was to continue to live life even while I was incarcerated.
Yeah. And then in 2014 must have been hard too, going through the clemency project and having your case passed over. But you obviously have a strong faith, and
Yeah,
you felt like God was watching over you.
I did.
He sent you an angel, didn't he? Yeah. He said,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, he sent me more after I was passed over during that whole clemency project 2014. I was fighting, and I just knew that someone was going to see my case because I actually was chosen to be in an ad campaign by the ACLU. It was called it had to do with this large number of people, almost 4,000, 3,600 and some people who were serving life in the federal system who had not committed a violent crime. So they selected 6 prisoners from all over the country, and they selected me. So I'm in newspapers, I'm in Ebony, I'm in Jet, I'm in the back of USA Today. There's an ad. I'm in this big ad campaign. So I became one of the most well-known unknown prisoners even then because my face is showing up, my story is showing up. At the end of Clemency Project 2014, I was left behind. I had to see people leave. Everybody is upset on my compound because I do so much. In prison, we don't have gangs, we have families. I had so many children, who I was mama to so many.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'd even be crying. Even the women started writing letters to the president at that time, President Obama, begging for my release, saying, this woman here is, and she's done this, and our mama, they would say, they were writing letters on my behalf while they themselves were incarcerated. But I was still overlooked. But I had learned in life, I always look beyond what I'm seeing. And it was hurtful. I'm like, but there still got to be a purpose in this. I'm like, what is the purpose? By this time, I've had so many things happen in my life that I've learned to totally lean and trust and depend on God, because I know that only He could bring me out. Because somehow man was letting me down again. And He did send an angel in my life. And that angel was Kim Kardashian.
It's quite an angel.
My angel. I used to call her my war angel.
Yeah, she went to war.
She went to
out.
war. Yeah, I didn't even know who Kim Kardashian was. That's the funny thing.
Right.
One of the most famous women in the world. I'm so happy that I didn't know who she was. I did this video op-ed while in prison that went viral.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I didn't know what viral meant either. When they told me that it had gone viral, I thought I had introduced a virus into the internet. Because there was no internet at the time. When I went to prison, I didn't know anything about the terms that they use on social media. Something is trending. What does that mean? And so when she tweeted out, this is so unfair, and contacted her attorney, Sean Hawley, to find me in prison, who asked me, this is what she said to me. She said, Alice, when I came to the phone, when she called the prison, I had a legal call. She told me who she was. She said, I have a very famous and wealthy client who would like to help you get out of prison. She said, and I'm to ask you if you'd like for her to help you. And I said to Sean, let me think about it. Yes. Do I want that? That's what oh my goodness. But she still didn't tell me who it was. So I had my daughter Google who Sean Hawley's clients were. And it said the Kardashians, Jenner, Justin, it said a lot of very famous people. And I said, I know who it is. Mm-hmm. She said, who do you think it is? I said, it's Kris Jenner. I just seen her on TV. And my daughter says, Mama, what if it's Kim Kardashian? And I said, Kim, who? He said, you don't know who Kim Kardashian is. And so she went on to tell me who Kim was. And sure enough, it turned out to be Kim. And Kim would go on to contact Ivanka, who showed Jared, who involved Jared. They put together a new legal team, and they called themselves Team Alice. Mm-hmm. And I started talking to Kim on the phone. And I guess because I had to ask people to give me pictures, if they could find pictures of Kim. They gave me a picture of Kim and her family, and I had Kanye, and I put him in my Bible on a scripture, and I started praying for Kim and her family that, that the Lord would bless them and that He would open doors for her and He would give her favor. And sure enough, it took 7 months now for her to finally get an audience with the president. And because I think 1 or 2 of those audiences had been canceled. And then she got an audience with him on my birthday. And that seemed like it was prophetic. My birthday of all the days that she's going to meet with President Trump. And so when she got that audience with them 7 days later, I was running across that road.
Wow. I just want to say, I know Brad has a question, but I just wanted to say, you're probably one of the few people in the world who could say Kim Kardashian knew who they were before they knew who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parallels, I think, to how you were raised. Your childhood, working so hard, your parents working constantly, to try to find better circumstances for themselves as well as their 9 children, and then in prison, doing everything that you did, you became a certified hospice volunteer. You were Special Olympics event coordinator of the year. I don't know how you do that from prison, but it's pretty amazing. And then now you're the CEO of TAG, and it's just it's an amazing transition that you've made from, being behind bars to really making huge differences in people's lives. I wanted to sort of transition a little bit. I think now's as good a time as any to sort of the work that you're doing at TAG, what criminal justice reform means to you, and sort of how you're working to make that happen. Because I think criminal justice reform can mean a whole lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Mhm.
So sort of learning about your approach and sort of what y'all are doing, I think would be really cool.
But really, I knew, Brad, that it was my story getting out. It really kind of put a human face on the need for criminal justice reform. Many people call me the face of the First Step Act. It means for me is that I've been given this huge blessing, and that's to be free. But there are so many people who are still incarcerated who don't have a voice. They don't have a Kim Kardashian. They don't have any celebrities. So I have to be their voices. I have to fight for them, not only fighting for them, but fighting for their children, because that was the thing that grieved all of us when we were locked up. We prayed and for our children. We cried when things happened to our children that we couldn't control. And it's a difference when you can look and read about someone, but it makes a huge difference when you can see the humanity in another human being. And so I feel not only honored to do it, I feel duty bound to continue the fight for those who are incarcerated and to continue the fight for those who have received their freedom, who many are being demonized now, who have made good use of their second chance. I have to also tell their stories too of what they're doing to impact for good in their neighborhoods and try to push back on some of what I'm hearing now to repeal the First Step Act, to repeal the CARES Act, to do all these things that were really good for the community. So, I feel that I have to use this voice that God has given me, this huge platform that I have now, not only to tell their stories, but to really to fight, to continue my fight for our youth who are being justice impacted.
Yeah. You had some great success there too in the, and I was involved.
Of course, Michael, you were right there on the battlefield with me. You were more than just involved.
Michael, we need to have you as a guest on the show. You got to tell us that story.
Yeah. Well, you were the convincing person.
He gets some things he can tell you about. The fight was real. Michael was right there side by side with me. That's why I was so honored to come on here, because I'm on here not only with a friend, but a fellow fighter. He was right there helping me fight for lives, because we weren't just fighting for that one person. We were fighting for their family, because when one person goes to prison, their entire family goes with them. It changes communities. And so me having the opportunity, I was given this opportunity to submit to help find these people. Michael was right there with me. We were working on so many cases together, trying to get them to the White House. And I had a lot of success with that, with helping literally 46 people get a second chance in life through mainly clemencies, but pardons and compassionate releases. But also, when President Trump signed the First Step Act, endorsed it rather, one of the things that he said was that I asked for sentencing reform because I didn't want there to be another Alice Johnson. I felt that he got it. Seeing a real life person and meeting me and seeing how hard I was working and how hard I was advocating for the lives of others. I'm not just advocating for freedom. I'm advocating for the lives of families too.
Yeah, absolutely. So you sort of brushed over it a little bit, the repeal of the First Step Act. What is that? What's going on there? What is that? I haven't heard too much about that. Is there a movement to repeal it? Are you getting pushback on your work? Who's saying that this is a bad thing?
Well, if you look at some of the things and some of the politicians, I'm not going to name names, but they have been very vocal in the media. So I'm not saying anything that you can't readily look at and you'll know exactly who the ones are who are pushing back publicly, but I'm sure there are some who are pushing back privately. I think the whole uptick in crime in America, the benefits and the people who've gotten out in the First Step Act, which is an astronomical number of people who've been given a second chance, it's always easier to say this is the group because these were criminals. And so they become the scapegoat. But when actuality, the people who were released on the First Step Act have the lowest recidivism rate. Our national recidivism rate for people who didn't go through, who didn't come out through the First Step Act is almost 4 times that of the people who went in, who gained their freedom and were rehabilitated and took programs and were deemed not a safety risk to their communities. Many of those didn't go back because they were safety risks. A lot of those were technical violations, but the number is so much less than those who don't go through the program. So you want to repeal something that is good for the communities. That makes no sense. Not only was the First Step Act, it was one of our huge bipartisan successes. Over 80, I think about 86% of both sides came together and said, this is not right. And if they could use my story and have my image, I was all over the place. I had they put images of me in DC where they had to get on the plane. It was at 66 places where you could go in and read my story. I was in DC speaking all over the country, almost running myself in the ground, fighting for the First Step Act. In fact, this month, December, is the 5-year anniversary of the First Step Act. Oh, wow. When I came out, I hit the ground running. I did not slow down. I hit the ground running, and people don't really know this. I was running so hard and not really taking care of myself. I got shingles during that time, but even shingles didn't stop me. I wrap up those shingles on my back. I was in so much pain, and I was still going to speaking engagements, trying to convince people and show them that the stereotype that they've had of what a prisoner looks like is wrong.
Yeah,
it's wrong.
There was a lot of momentum for a Second Step Act too, right? And I saw the seminal moment where the division happened, and what's happening in the Republican Party, and it's not even their fault necessarily, is they're reflexively going, the crime rates are going up. So some of them are reflexively going, oh, we need to be tough on crime again. But by being tough on crime in that way, we created all these other problems where an Alice Johnson gets a life sentence for answering a phone. Right. And we've all agreed that's unjust, but the seminal moment was George Floyd. And the two sides ripped apart. And even I've seen in Texas, this isn't really a question, it's more of a comment. I've seen in Texas prior efforts that I've been involved in at bipartisan criminal justice reform, can't do it anymore. So I guess my question for you, Alice, might be, how do we restore that or re-energize that, bipartisan, where people are just like, this is wrong. Why are we doing this? And they're ambivalent about political party. They're just like, what we're doing is wrong. We need to fix it. And we don't care who we have to work with to get it done. You have any ideas?
For me, criminal justice reform, this is not a partisan issue. It's a people issue. It's a humanitarian issue. We're in a crisis right now of rolling back all of the things that we've accomplished through this work because the people are being unfairly demonized who've gotten a second chance. And so that's why I feel that my work is so important, is because I'm telling the stories. I'm working to tell the stories of the people who've gotten a second chance, not only who need a second chance, but this is part of what I'm pushing now, is I'm working on right now, is to tell the stories of people who got a second chance and are making good use of the second chance and really changing the narrative of these folks are the problem. Really, criminal justice reform is common sense. You can be smart on crime, you can hold people responsible and accountable for their actions, but you also need to not unjustly punish people and think that locking them up and warehousing them and throwing away the key is the answer, because that's not having good fiscal responsibilities to this country either. When you look at the cost to incarcerate an individual, what it costs in terms of their upkeep, you got their children that's left behind, you've got communities that are being shattered. Really, the full human cost of it, you can't put that, you can't quantify that, because you feel it, you know it, you see it, but you can't put a number because it impacts generations. Um, and it's just not right what is taking place. I just can't emphasize that enough to say that we got to stop just throwing stuff out there as solutions without having the facts. Because those who are pushing back, look at the facts. Look at, are these the people that are causing the uptick in crime? Absolutely not. They've just become the victims, the scapegoat for the talk to continue. We're going to be tough on crime, and this is how we're going to be tough on crime. What does tough on crime mean? Tough on families? Tough on people who are defenseless? No, as I said, I believe that people should be held accountable. I want to see communities safe. That's the work that I do. I'm not just saying open the doors and let everyone out. I'm saying also that we need to put things in place too. It has to start with community-based things. We can't look to the government to fix everything. But I know that we're getting into election cycle now, and it just sounds good to say that.
I know.
So you can go ahead, Charles.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I was going to kind of shift subjects. So if you have something on this, feel free.
Well, I was going to ask. So there's that moment of separation that Michael and you were alluding to with George Floyd, and since then, you have we've talked about the crime wave and everything, or the uptick in crime. You have places like San Francisco, for instance, or very, very progressive DAs, and they say, if you do shoplifting under $600 or whatever the case may be, we're not going to prosecute you. And so now there's all of these really major news stories about the smash and grabs. I think there was a Nike store the other day. People just run in, they just take a bunch of clothes, they run away, and they have all these different cars and everything. And that's certainly a non-violent crime. No one is, as far as I know, no one is getting injured in the process, but it's still really damaging to local businesses and the local economy and the local community. In this criminal justice reform paradigm, what do we do as a community? Like, what's the community response to that? Like, how should we respond to that? What's the process, do you think?
Putting a dollar amount on what someone can do, it means that today you go do this amount, tomorrow you can go get it again. I think that's a bad message that's being sent out, even to the youth, to individuals who are committing these crimes. We talk about how did we come to this place. I think it's more than just the summer of when George Floyd was killed. I think it's also the lockdowns. COVID played a role in that. And people started I think mentally, something shifted in this country. And then as young people saw, people, we don't have a right. I don't have a right to take anything from you. It's not mine to take. And there's got to be some accountability, because the perpetrators, many of them are extremely young. That's why I said that we've got to also, and they're being given this example, it's almost like mobs are being formed where together they run in stores and they smash and grab and they do these things. There has to be some intervention that takes place. The answer is not to just lock a whole lot of people up and think that, because there's going to be more that comes in behind them. We have to get to the very root of what this problem is. And a lot of this has to do with, it's got to be a paradigm shift in thinking. And that means we got to go into the schools, we got to go into the neighborhoods. It's got to be a community thing. But there has to be some accountability. You can't just say that I'm not going to hold you responsible for your crimes, because then you are, really being a participant to the uptick in crime now. And so I can't tell you all of the solutions, but I'm honestly willing to work with anyone on finding solutions to this. But please stop demonizing those who gotten a second chance and are making good use of their second chance, because that's not who these folks are.
Well, it seems like Mike, like Brad was saying, it seems like we have, some folks on the progressive left today who do say things like that, like, oh, a certain dollar amount, we're going to turn a blind eye to it. But then you have folks on the right who talk about kind of expanding the pool of people that we're putting in prison. So they're both somewhat reactionary to the issues, but I feel like we're losing sight of the core of the problem, which is making sure that we're holding people justly accountable, right? Making sure that the sentence actually fits the crime that they did. And if it's something that is nonviolent, and we can do something outside of prison to rehabilitate them and have them serve in another way, we should be looking at that. So it seems like we've gotten so far away from what the actual issue is that we're focused on everything else and kind of leaning more into the politics of it.
You're absolutely right, Charles. I've been working with a leader out of Europe who has, they've really got some good solutions. We don't have to recreate the wheel in many of these cases. And the next thing that I'm including in my organization is prevention strategies. It's context-informed prevention strategies, because every neighborhood is the same, as every person is the same. You can't just put a rubber stamp and say, this is the problem all over the United States. It is not. We have to understand what's going on in that community, and then go in and have preventive strategies. And that's what I'm excited to be trying to help tackle, because for me, I'm not a person who sits on the sidelines. Thusly, my organization is named Taking Action for Good, not waiting on someone else to take action. But I have children, grandchildren, other family members that are living in these impacted cities. And I'm not going to be a sideline watcher. I'm in the game.
I had a question. This is what I was going to ask before. I'm curious if you'll tell us kind of what your experience first meeting the president was like, because hearing your story from the beginning of kind of the backbreaking work of picking cotton and then all the ups and downs of life to end up in the Oval Office being the cornerstone of federal legislation to get people out of prison. I mean, it's a huge delta in between. So can you tell us about kind of what that experience was like meeting the president for the first time?
Well, meeting him for the first time, I was so in awe to meet the person who signed the papers, who saw me as a human being and gave me my life back, gave my family our life back. And then I didn't just go there one time. I met him for the first time during the State of the Union, when I was invited for that. And I'll never forget that either. To hear my name and hear the President of the United States talk about me at the State of the Union, and then to stand up, to be sitting up there with Jared and Ivanka. But that would not be our last meeting. There will be many other meetings after that. And one thing I learned, Charles, is that we talk about people without talking to them. I've sat down and I talked to President Trump in the Oval Office, and I didn't even have fear, because this is another human being. And we talked on a human level. I've talked to him about, people and their families, and I've seen, that compassion in his eyes for them. It was no cameras were rolling. It was, the people, the White House attorneys, others were in the room. And I really he listened to me. And, I'll never forget that, because he didn't have to. And you probably know, I even was on Air Force One. I've even been on Air Force One with the president. And so, meeting and seeing, President Trump as a human being, and he see me as a human being. He didn't treat me like I was a criminal or ex-felon. He talked to me and treated me as a human being. And I gave him respect. And you know what? He gave me respect too.
Yeah. he gave you respect, but he also gave you responsibility and ownership.
Sure
He's
did.
like, hey, Alice, bring me all the Alices, and I'll consider it.
Yeah, he did. And, you know, Michael, as I say, you was right there working alongside with me on that. And we worked hard to help identify. You know, people were working hard, but I can tell you we were in the trenches working. And to have the president of the United States say to me that he know there's more like you. And of course, those cases had to be vetted by the office, you know, by the White House counsel after they were submitted. But we submitted some good cases, over 100 cases uh, to the White House. And I was able to even, you know, sit before the president and personally talk about some of those cases. Um, and even, you know, just looking back on that, that time don't even seem real. What is that? They said Joseph went from the pit to the palace. I went from the prison to the White House.
Yeah.
You know, to be sitting in there and to be able to talk as I'm talking to you, to one of the most powerful leaders in the world, and to have them listen to me. There's no anything that I can even measure that up against.
How are some of the I know you stay in touch with everyone
I do.
that you advocated for. To give us some examples of how some folks are doing.
Well, people have started businesses. Well, one of the people who I advocated for his release was Kwame Kilpatrick.
Yeah.
He just became my executive director with TAG.
Yeah.
And I don't think I could have picked a better candidate. You know, he was the former mayor of Detroit. I'm sure people look and they like to define you by your past, but I can say Kwame has really stepped up to the plate and made changes from the day that he walked out. He's now got a ministry of Movemental Ministries. He's remarried, has 2 kids, and he is absolutely making a huge difference. And, you know, we share the commonality of we were both prisoners. So we understand. And we both were, I would say, in our own different rights, people that other prisoners came to. And it changed his life. Prison changed my life. And the same second chance that I was given, and I've made good use, Kwame is making good use of his second chance. So I'm not just talking about second chances and second chance hiring. I'm doing it because he's a great candidate for it. We've got others who've opened businesses up, gotten married. One of the guys who we found through the organization Taking Action for Good, James Bryant Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, he's doing so great right there in Texas.
Oh, really?
Yes, he's right there in Texas. The kid community loves him. We've got, I could go on and on naming all of them. I know all of them because I do keep up with what they're doing, but they're all doing great. They're living lives. They haven't gone back to prison. They're just really making a difference in their families and in their communities. And, you know, when President Trump said more Alice's, we went out and found them. We went out and found them more. And there's still so many other Alice Johnsons who are incarcerated, who are waiting on their moment that they can be reunited with their families and communities. And I'm their voice. I say I'm the voice for the voiceless. And I'm also the voice for those who have been set free and who want to show what a second chance looks like. I just celebrated my 5 years free in LA with Kim. She came out, North came with her. And if you look down the whole little road to freedom, we had things, and the whole things was that a lot can happen in 5 years, and a lot has happened. And I'm looking forward to these next 5 years and really making a positive difference. The Lord has gifted me with health and strength. And as long as I have that, I'm going to keep the fight going.
Yeah. Well, Alice Marie Johnson, your story is more than inspiring, and your work is as well. I want to make sure that people know sort of, how to find you, how to learn more and stuff like that. You, of course, have the book, Afterlife, My Journey from Incarceration to Freedom. your website, takingactionforgood.org. Is there anything else that you wanted to plug? Did we not go over something? I mean, is there, final word here?
Well, my final word is, I guess, when we use the word criminal justice reform, that's the word we've used a whole lot. And just the word, when you say criminals, I just want to lock the criminals up. These are people. These are human beings. We are a country that believes in second chances. And that means second chances for all people. I would ask people that those who are in your community, who've been released, give them a chance. Don't define them by the person that they used to be, because when we keep doing that, when we keep naming and putting labels on people, we're causing a bigger separation and a bigger gulf in this country.
Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
Amen.
Fellas, do y'all have anything?
Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, your story, I've read it over the years. I've watched you speak and things like that, but it's amazing to be able to talk to you and just hear how much you've done and what you're going to do. And so just thank you for all that you're doing. I mean, it's amazing. So thank you for sitting with us today. This is great.
Thank you.
Just honored to have you on, Alice. Great to see your face.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here with you again. Happy to see you. Good to see you again too, Michael. I pressed onward. That is my word.
See, for me, I'm like, it's time for you to just go spend time with the twins. But I know that, it's going to fall on deaf ears. You're going to keep doing it.
No, I can't help it. I can't help it. Michael, how can I walk away from this? That's been a huge part of my life. I sat among others just like me.
I know.
Well, Alice Marie Johnson, thanks a lot. We really appreciate you coming on.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Bye.